All right, everybody, welcome back to the Chris Claremont X-Men Comic Club with your hosts, me, Chris Anderson, and John Coates. John, how you doing, man?
I am doing excellent. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well. We have to back it up a little bit here to issue 95 that we talked about last week because I didn't realize that at the back of the classic X-Men issues, there were stories that some of them are pretty great and pretty relevant that we should probably talk about. So at the back of classic X-Men issue number 3, which was which reprinted issue 95, where Thunderbird dies. There is a story that we should probably hit upon, right?
Yes, sir. It's time to pay our respects to the first X-Man to die in the battle against supervillainy.
So these backups, at least in the beginning, were drawn by John Bolton.
Ooh, yeah.
If we want to do you want to flip? Do you want to turn to the story? So yeah, looking at the art here, it's pretty jarring to go from reading Cockrum's stuff and then seeing this, because my immediate reaction is, well, I don't like it because it's not, because it's different than Cockrum stuff, but that's the wrong reaction because you got to look at it through a different lens completely. His work here, when I really look at it, first of all, art-wise, doesn't this feel like a style that you would have seen more in like a Vertigo book?
Oh yeah, totally.
Time. I think he's doing a lot of real like photo ref stuff, and then also because he'll do the technique where when light is hitting something, he won't draw the line at all, like a bounding line.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel, then it's colored in with the color process of the time. I feel like this art would serve so much better in black and white.
Yeah, I wonder what it looks like, just his black and white.
Yeah.
Because I get the sense every now and again that his line work is so fine that you're probably missing some lines here and there with like the crappy print process here in the mid 80s when these are getting published.
Yeah. And I don't think these particular issues held up very well either, because more than even like older books that I've gotten from Marvel and stuff, like a lot of the printing is wiped off and faded from it. So, but no, I mean the artwork is great and the tone is set perfectly for this stuff. So we kind of open up with the issue. The title is Mourning. So this is immediately after Thunderbird dies, but wasn't released in continuity at the time. That was in 1970, probably
75, and then this story is from 86.
Yeah, okay, so we're jumping 11 years later and sort of filling in this moment afterwards where we got Professor Xavier. They're out where I think Arizona, I believe, is where John Proudstar and his family are from. I think they mentioned that in the past. This might not be Arizona.
It's like Arizona or New Mexico.
Or yeah, okay. So in that area, the Southwest.
Yeah.
And we have him just sitting alone in his wheelchair in the desert, pondering like how silly he was to think that something like this, a death, wouldn't happen. And it got me kind of thinking, like, sure, Gwen Stacy had died at this point. I don't know if there were too many characters, too many real stakes in comics up to this point. And on top of that, I don't think he's ever been brought back, right?
No, he hasn't been brought back. But
So he's one of the very few characters that have died in, you know, a Big Two book that has actually died and not come back.
Yeah, it's actually pretty cool, and I'm really glad that they haven't brought him back. And
yeah,
we're probably lucky that he had a younger brother who does show up in the X books, or maybe they would have.
That's exactly what I was thinking. They sort of pick. Well, we'll get to it at the end of this, but yeah. So they're on the ranch or the reservation where he grew up, and Jean comes up to him, and they start having a chat. Charles was connected to John Proudstar, aka Thunderbird, when psychically, when he was trying to, you know, convince him to, you know, get off the plane before it, or, you know, just get off of it when it exploded. So he felt every bit of that, and that scarred him. And you start to think like, gosh, that over time, this has gotta, you know, really destroy somebody, you know, some emotionally, mentally. But Jean can relate because she's also a telepath, or a, you know, has the psychic ability. What is her power? What are their powers called? The telepath?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, telepathy is just sort of your mind reading, and then telekinesis is moving stuff. And yeah.
I thought they used some other word sometimes, like a psionic or something like that. But
yeah, like psionic abilities. I think that just means it's just like
mental powers.
You have brain powers, but like it's not specific.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
Like a general term.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then this last panel, they hear that they sort of talk about how they hear a cry and they react. I'm surprised that there's no onomatopoeia or something from that in that panel.
Yeah.
And they race off to find that Thunderbird's body has been stolen.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that they have anything to put in a coffin, because he was, you know, he's on a fighter jet that just completely explodes.
Right.
But you know, he was a tough mutant, so maybe they were able to actually recover something.
Right.
I love the costuming of the X-Men here.
Yes.
On these pages, you know, like Wolverine looks like this, you know, guy from the Canadian woods, and Colossus looks like, you know, he's like, I don't know, like he's like a farmer, like getting dressed up for like a wedding or something. And Storm's get up is like really interesting.
Yeah. So Storm's sort of dressed in this like sort of I don't know, like I don't know enough about the culture, but like maybe traditional clothes of where she's from. And then like you said, like Wolverine is just, you know, he's gotten his cowboy Sunday best on.
Yeah.
The parents of John Proudstar here are not very happy with them. They're just like, you know, you've done enough here. Leave us in peace.
Yeah, like you took him away, he died, you brought him back, so you know that's all you can do, basically.
Exactly. But being the X-Men, they're not going to let that lie.
Heck no. And this is great. The Wolverine, like he can tell right away what happened, because he can smell the kid, and he's like, it smells kind of like John. I bet it's a little brother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like spot on, Wolverine.
Yep. Because as we know from the last issue, from the fill-in pages from the classic X-Men issue that they added in, it's where Thunderbird is kind of like, oh, I'm, you know, I don't know where I fit in here, because, you know, Wolverine is a tracker too, and that, blah blah blah. So we know that Wolverine is also a very good tracker now.
Yeah, and then now we get all these like really great moments of members remembering just times they had with Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Which are really great.
And things that he said and things that they wished that, you know, he didn't like commit suicide or anything. He was just overzealous with trying to prove himself. But, you know, there are these moments where they talk about how, like, he talks about how, you know, he has family and stuff, but nothing really to go back to. And you know, this moment over here with with Storm, he talks about, you know, how he didn't really have a girlfriend or a family of his own or anything like that, you know.
Yeah, it's a really great sequence. Like that he can sneak up on her. And then she asks why he measures himself against Wolverine. And he just says, well, he's the best. He's the man to beat. Because he's trying to think like, well, I got to be better than everybody. And Wolverine's the best guy here. So I'm going to measure myself against him. And then Storm's like, well, what, you know, why does that matter?
Right.
And then
you get to him.
Yeah. And then you get where like, do you have any family or friends? And he's like, I left him in the jungle. And that's where we start to hint that he was in a soldier like in Vietnam.
Right. Yeah. So he's carrying not only like this chip on his shoulder, because not only is he like, you know, a lonely guy, didn't really have much to go on. You know, he's kind of, I guess, estranged from his family, just hated where he grew up. And, you know, doesn't really know his place in the world. But then you get on top of it the trauma of war.
Yep.
You know, and that all that adds up to, you know, really filling in this character. You know, he's not just a one-dimensional person anymore. And they've really built him up over the course of just 2 issues, really, you know, 3 issues. To somebody that you know him better than you know any of these characters right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's dead.
Yeah, and he's gone.
Yeah.
So what do you think of like this drawing here of Thunderbird up in the top right? Like, boy, just that image of him right there is like it reminds me of like Adam Hughes, Alan Davis type artwork. The way the lighting and the shadows.
Yep, and there's a little bit of like Neil Adams in there too. You know, yeah, definitely like photo reft. I like the use of using the negative space to draw the plants in that one, and a lot of these.
Yeah, it allows like the focus to really pop, you know, of who you're supposed to be paying attention to. Yeah.
He does that whole halo effect around them in the dark too, which I you know, I always talk about how I hate that. And I don't love it here, but I get it. It still works, you know. It still works.
Yeah. And and then we get back to the present of them being on the reservation, and now here we meet John's little brother, James.
Yeah. So did I know that later he becomes Warpath, right?
Yeah.
Does he show up as Warpath before 1980, whenever this was released?
86?
86?
Yeah, because he shows up. I think he shows up in a later issue of X-Men, and then he goes on and shows up in New Mutants because he attends the White Queen's school of mutants, the Hellions, who are sort of the New Mutants' adversaries.
Okay.
He takes the name Thunderbird while he's there.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he does, and then he goes by Warpath sort of when he goes to X-Force.
Got it. Okay, because X-Force is my introduction to him.
Yeah.
So my introduction to him. So, you know, as we know, I haven't really taken this whole journey. So Yeah. Yeah. That's
and
yeah, here he is. He's got his brother up. He's gonna send them, send him off the way that of their custom, and they're gonna burn him on a pyre. He's gonna burn him on a pyre, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then Wolverine just sort of watching and thinking about what happened, and finds this little box that was John's stuff, and he sees that he's a corporal in the Marines, and he had medals from the war and stuff, but it's just kind of thrown away.
Yeah, and Wolverine, was a soldier too, so he can relate.
Yeah, and and John Proudstar will not be the last Native American member of the X-Men who was also a soldier. So that whole thing kind of comes back around later.
Sure.
With a different character. But yeah, and then Wolverine goes back to the rest of them, and they're trying to know, hey, what's going on? And he just says, there's nothing for us here. Just a boy laying his big brother to rest in the old ways of their people. Whatever Thunderbird was running from or trying to prove, he's at peace now. We should all be so lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a really great moment for Wolverine here too. And it just makes me feel like you can feel how Claremont is bringing something to these books that hasn't really been brought to the writing before.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a combination of, him having seen what the people before him did, but then also his, his background in the theater, and there's also like a flourish in his words, the way that he words things in his writing, that I feel is like theatrical and elevates these to another level. And in these particular pages, I really started to feel that.
Yeah. This backup's great. All the backups are really great because as they're coming out here, 85, 86, 87.
Yeah.
He's 10 years into writing the X-Men, and he's really just on all cylinders go.
Yeah, totally. And then you got this final scene.
Oh yeah. Yeah, where we get our young Proudstar and just sort of his anger, which carries on into his character as when he starts showing up in the books, saying that the white man's war, you survived the white man's war only to be lured to your doom by that devil Xavier.
Yeah.
And you will be avenged.
Yeah. That's great stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's a good one. It's a good way to kind of go back and fill in, some things that maybe he felt were kind of, I mean, I'm sure that he had to put something in, but that one felt like it was filling in some more character heavy, weighty stuff that, added to the story.
Yeah, it feels like something that you didn't get in the originals because Thunderbird was only with us for such a short amount of time. And some of the other backups, you've got 12 years of reading Storm getting characterized in the book. So then if you get a Storm backup, maybe it's not quite as, it doesn't feel quite as like necessary that you should probably read it. But this one feels really important, important if you want to know about Thunderbird. And that's Classic totally. X-Men 3 again, for anybody following at home that wants to go find that one.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So we're moving on to issue number 96, the all new, all different X-Men.
Oh, yeah. And I got to say, this is a good one, Chris. I really like this issue.
Yeah, it's well, let's just get into it.
Let's get into it, and we get this great demon cover here. All kinds of good stuff there, and of course, this is dealing with the Thunderbird death, sort of fallout.
Yep. I love this opening splash. I love the lettering. it's almost like a tombstone behind him there, even though I think
Yeah.
it's like part of a mountain of Thunderbird kind of screaming, the Night of the Demon thing there. I love, the framing of the foreground tree with the squirrel and the leaves and stuff like that. And then, middle ground is your focus, and then the background. It's just a great composition.
Yeah, and a little note, a plot assist from Bill Mantlo in this issue. And it's the last issue where there's a plot assist, and then it's Claremont 100% the rest of the way.
That's interesting because I'm looking at the classic X-Men issue. It does not say that in it, nor does it say it in the regular like titles and stuff, which is interesting.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much Bill then did on it or not. Or how much of his plot got followed, or if he just provided some advice here and there.
Sure,
it'd be interesting to know. So we get Cyclops sort of walking in the forest, remembering what happened, and just kind of dwelling on it a little bit, and then we get a little flashback.
I love how bent that the bottom panel of the plane, the way that the plane is bent, the metal bends there, and that lettering is great.
Yeah, so good. And then we get anytime Cyclops gets angry, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So it just gets super dramatic.
I know. And look how dramatic the acting is too, with him like leaning against that tree. It's great.
He's like, and he cuts loose, and then but he blasts out this tree, and inside a tree is some sort of cool statue deal.
And
then of course he's like, oh, what have I done?
That I couldn't figure out. So it's inside the tree.
Yeah, it's actually not a great drawing. You catch it in the words at the end when they repair the things.
Oh, okay.
But it's like in a tree. Yeah.
Right.
So then now Cyclops is like, destroyed all this forest. Collateral damage is something you get to start to see with Claremont. Yeah. And now he's moving around, and then here we get this statue that he busted and then doesn't even know it's there.
Right.
And now we start to get like something's coming out of it.
Yeah, that's a great 3-panel sequence there of him walking away and the thing building up. And I like the fact that there's consequences to him, like having a hissy fit a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean that's what Cyclops is always worried about, right? He's like, if I have a little hissy fit, like, people didn't die, but I wrecked all these trees and all this nature.
Yeah.
So then we get back to the rest of the X-Men here, having a nice training session in the danger room.
Wolverine still has his curved claws here and his straight, long ears.
Yep, and he's calling Nightcrawler Elf.
I love him swinging in that top panel. It's such a funny looking drawing, but it totally works.
Yeah. And then of course he somebody laughs at him and he loses his cool.
Yeah. You can't make fun of me.
Yeah, and boom, almost takes out Nightcrawler right there.
Oh yeah.
And then Banshee, in his awesome, just sort of just normal getup with his hat and his pipe.
Yep,
kind of scolds him a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. And then I love this where they're just talking. And then
while all these lasers and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, boy, that is not safe, guys.
No, that's exactly what I thought when I was reading this too. I was like, wow, this is a very nonchalant conversation to be happening while, actual things that can hurt you are flying around over your head.
Yeah. But it's great. So, Xavier for the first time mentions that he might be leaving, so he's got invited somebody to help look after things. And Banshee goes to find out who it is. And here's our first appearance of Moira McTaggart.
Yes.
So Claremont's kind of getting most of the reins in this issue, and right away he's bringing in cool sort of human characters that'll be surrounding the X-Men, and through his run there's a whole bunch of them. And they all have like cool little roles, and they interact with the team in really cool ways, and it just really sort of builds out their world in a way that other superhero books, you might not have that.
Right.
And then the other thing he's doing right away now we get a little insert of something else going on.
You've got a B story going on here then. You got a B story happening then. I'll cut to like a B story, right?
Yeah. And he drops in great little B stories and C stories that then he's going to pay off in future issues. And this is sort of the first one where we get this army guy, Dr. Lang, and he's kind of going crazy, and he hates mutants. With his Project Armageddon, he's screaming about. Oop, we got to get past some ads here. But he's got to get it signed off by the army, and this other guy who shows up is basically telling him he's crazy and I'm not going to sign off on your project.
Right.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting. Like if you've read the early X-Men, he doesn't say what he's working on, but he name drops Boulevard Trask.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you can see in the background that they're sort of like training these other soldiers to teach them about mutants. So they got to pick, there's Jean Grey, and then he's pointing to, Beast, the original Beast back there, and, like height and all that stuff. And then he says at the end, Washington's not going to fund this, it's sorry I had to end like this. And he says, so am I, Michael, because that means you must never reach Washington.
Yeah.
Hey, we cut out there for a minute. That was weird.
Woo, it was such a good moment.
It's right.
The internet couldn't handle it.
I can't say the magic word alive anymore.
Yeah. Also, look at the great machinery and sort of lab tech.
That felt very Kirby to me when I looked at the computers and stuff in there. But that angle is really cool too.
Yeah.
And then let's pause from your issue and pull mine up here.
Oh yeah, because you've got a couple extra pages.
That's right. So this is the classic X-Men issue. There's an insert here. And so what happens here is we've got like this moment where Storm is just sort of swimming down in the pool. I guess they call it like the catacombs of the mansion or something like that. And she's always swims down there alone by herself, but today Nightcrawler decides to, like, the team decides they're going to come join him, so he just sort of like bamfs into there, and he drops into the pool. Says, what a pleasant surprise, Aurora. How nice of you to join us. And then he opens his eyes for an evening swim, and look at those eyes. Oh, that's great. And so he just like jumps out of the pool, bamfs, and then lands in front of everybody else. And he's like, everybody, turn around, trust me on this one, please. Go back inside, hurry. And then she crawls out of the pool and says, Nightcrawler, why are you behaving like such a loon? And everybody's like, oh, because she's swimming buck naked, doesn't see what the big fuss is about. And so Colossus takes off his, sweater and throws it on her, and then Charles comes in telepathically and is like, listen, it might be customary in your own land, but it's not in this one. For the sake of the group harmony, I suggest in the future you use more discretion. So you know, there's a moment that they felt needed to be put into this story at that spot. I thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah, it's an interesting cultural thing they like ascribe to Storm here. That like because she's sort of from a rural area that like everybody's just comfortable just being naked, or because
it's just a cultural thing, right?
Yeah, cultural thing in East Africa where she's from. Yeah, I don't know how to feel about it. You know, as a modern, I don't know, writer thinking about like if I would do that or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the question is does it add to what is to come in the rest of the story? Now, I have not read any of that other stuff, so I don't know. From your point of view and as a writer's point of view, does it add to anything that, you know, we're in for in the future here?
I don't know if it adds to anything, because they do address sort of that she's more just more comfortable, you know, with like less attire on.
So she's just like
in the issues, yeah, just sort of that kind of a free spirit or whatever. When she's alone. Well, so I don't know if it's yeah. I don't know. Boy, I don't know how to. Well, okay, I don't know if this is like if it's a white character, if they say that's a cultural thing. If she's like, oh, she's Swedish, she just likes to be naked.
Sure.
You know? So like it isn't like a big thing through like the X-Men stories, thankfully. But it's just an interesting thing to note, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then they do drop in this little extra thing here between Charles and Moira here. So we get to see her a little bit more, where he's, you know, finishing his conversation with her. And she's talking about how these new ones are sort of opening him up and bringing him out of his shell. And then he says, Moira, do you ever think of what was between us? And so, you know, that is sort of foreshadowing that there is a foreshadowing that there is a past between them, you know, which was not in the original story. So maybe that is something that could add to the story as you go on.
Yeah, it is a nice foreshadowing, because like then it does come up in some flashbacks.
Sure.
In some future issues.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a nice like, oh, it would just, you know, they get together again, so of course they would mention it, you know.
Yeah, these eyes look very Kirby, and this face looks very Kirby, which I think you thought was interesting. It's always crazy to see because this issue is inked by Sam Granger, and then when you get to these pages, they're inked by Jack Abel. And you know, I think I've mentioned this before, but it's such a contrast because he's sort of using a smaller brush, you know, a more delicate brush than when on these pages, and you can just see, like, if you squint, how thin the lines are as compared to these ones. You know, same penciler, of course, 11 years different, but just the inker can really change the way that the book looks. And on with the story. That was the insert.
So, so now we're back. Everybody's hanging out at the mansion and having coffee. And I got to say, I am a sucker for superheroes just having coffee and just chilling. Love it. Love it.
That's what, in fact, that's what your next book is entirely about. It's just this.
Yeah. Stuff's going on, and they're like, we're not doing that. We're got to finish this cup first.
Yeah.
And it's great. And you get this Wolverine right here, like just carving the table.
Yeah, that's a great one. How the wood is curling.
Yeah, and it's in the professor's mansion, so it's probably like a really expensive antique.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just cutting it up, just like whatever. But it's great. And the Banshee is kind of, he's hitting on Moira. And then all of a sudden, Zaram! Good Lord, Scott's eye beams, full power.
Yeah, they could see that he was outside, and then not quite Professor, at least not anymore. Boom. Good Lord, Scott. Oh man. And I just love the lettering of this with the automatopoeia. Dave Hunt is the letterer on this. I really love his big letters on here.
Yeah, super fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then this demon design I think is great.
It's so weird. It's got like in order to make it look angry, the eyelid, a normal eyelid would just flip down like this, but this one goes down in the middle like that, like a furrowed brow. So that's how they solve the problem of making it look not surprised all the time.
Yeah. And an interesting thing for us to note is, so this is the first demon showing up in a Claremont X-Men, but there's going to be a lot of demons. In his run. It's really interesting, like the amount of like demons and demon armies that they have to deal with, and that really cause like a lot of big things to happen all through his run.
Yeah, it's interesting. That is interesting. I wonder where that comes from. That would be something to ask. I didn't really realize that there were a lot of demons in it, and it kind of felt like like, I don't know, for some reason it felt odd to me that all of a sudden, we're dealing with these mutant stories, and then the first real thing that they're up against, when they're on their own, besides Count Nefaria, is a demon. And I thought I would be up against other mutants or something, or, people who hate mutants, but no, instead it's something totally different. Not a threat from space, but a threat from hell, which is like interesting.
Yeah, and he says he's Karok, the Shatterer of Souls, Karok, the Slayer of Men, Karok, the Damned.
Damn.
Oh, yeah, this dude is hard.
You are a soldier of hell. You got a lot of embellishments to your name.
Yeah, and so everybody's trying to take him on, and he's just crazy powerful. Storm gets a go, gets knocked flat. Colossus we'll see through these first few issues, has got kind of a crush on Storm.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Like, you threatened her, so like that gets him real angry.
Yeah, he's pissed now.
But of course, doesn't do anything because he's the master of humans.
Yeah.
So he's taking him out.
Yeah, and I thought it was kind of funny that everybody's kind of worried about him here. Or did that happen? Like, no, maybe not. I thought everybody was kind of worried about him here, but then, like, you saw in the issue before how he, like, jumps out of a plane and lands on the ground, and he's totally fine. So.
Yeah, maybe it's like they figured out already, like, okay, he can take a beating, and we don't have to worry about this guy so much. And here we get Wolverine jumping in, and Wolverine actually hurts him.
Yep.
Cutting him with his claws.
Those adamantium claws, man.
Yeah, and one of my notes for this issue is this issue is the first cool Wolverine issue.
Well, it's the time you see him fight, really, for the first time.
Yeah, he doesn't do a lot through the first couple, and he's just kind of mouthy. And then this one, he's got a little more character. He's got a little more charisma when he's like mouthing off to people, you know. He's a little more, I don't know, Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwoody, where you're like, okay, this guy, you know, he's mean, but he's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's neat to see, you know, we all know Logan, we know Wolverine, but it's cool to see how he's developing here, you know, as a character and as his personality, that other people are going to then, you know, write the character and, you know, draw from this to further develop him. And it's just really cool to see it happening sort of in real time here.
Yeah. And he gets to the point where he thinks he's killed the demon, and he kind of like pauses and freaks out. And you get this moment where he's thinking about that he's had 10 years of sort of mental health training, basically, in therapy, so that he wouldn't kill people or kill monsters or kill something. And he's like, and now like I've blown all that 10 years of training and stuff. So it's kind of like a nice, like if you know what comes, you know, years and years later, then you're like, ooh, it's like, you know, like post Weapon X, he's got to go through some serious training so he can like be a person again.
Yeah, this is a moment like an alcoholic having a drink after 10 years or something like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, don't worry about it because he's not dead.
Right. I love that last panel of Wolverine in the foreground, you know, and the four of them, they're kind of looking at him while he's talking. It's a very Wally Wood sort of, you know, panels that always work page panel.
And then, of course, we get here where then at the end of the page, the professor's kind of mind linking with the demon, and you get this great like Lovecraft stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all total just Lovecraft stuff.
Psychedelic. Look at that little one with the bug eyes there, and like it's like a cartoony looking thing, almost like a worm, slug, snail creature thing that looks like like cross between like Cthulhu and like Man Thing up on top.
Yeah. Yeah, great panel. I love the black inking on Xavier here.
Yes, it's really great. Really, the downloading on that is amazing. That feels like Neil Adams inking, you know.
Yeah.
With the stark blacks on it, and also you see the monument now here that that Cyclops blasted too.
Mm-hmm.
And go back to that one again. Look at the lettering on that at the bottom. It says, and in that moment, Charles Xavier screams, and then it's shattered there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how. I mean, obviously the lettering was done after it was penciled and inked and then added on top of it. But man, coming from that gaping maw of psychedelic, Peter Max looking, lined mouth coming right out of it, and then when it says blast screams, and then it's got the shattered glass down at the bottom corner. It was like a perfect little dance there.
Yeah.
I love this.
The Moira running in with the machine gun.
Yes, like
yeah.
What? She's the housekeeper. This is what in the newspaper ad that she answered, right? Light cleaning and
machine gun skills,
arms experience necessary.
Yeah. It's like that's like if she had a G.I. Joe battle card, like the back of it, it's like small arms fire and house cleaning. Under her like skills. And also the X-Men have an armory with machine guns.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Of course they do.
But the professor was able to get from his mind that they got to destroy the statue. And so, boom, now we get Storm is going into action.
Yep. Great shot of her on the top there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great flying stuff. Then all of a sudden we get all these other little demons coming out of the statue, and they're attacking her with these like energy spears.
Love all these little crazy demons. And the one in the bottom left panel with the teeth, it's so Kirby-esque, but also not at the same time. When it gets super bombastic, like these middle 4 panels, it gets a little bit confusing. But
right, like it's too much in too small a space.
Too. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. And then Storm is just like basically ignoring them, and you get the name drop of this Engarai, sort of demon kind. And then that name will come back way later.
Okay.
So they're like not completely just nameless demons, but they have a name, and then we'll see it some more. And then energy gets blasted from the statue at Storm, but she's gonna just take it because she's a champ. And now, you know, we had that little backstory moment with Wolverine, and now we get one with Storm.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden she's remembering, like, and I love that it isn't explaining anything. It's just showing images, and you know, okay, here she is a kid. She was trapped in some rubble, and probably other people died, probably her family, and then she's freaking out. So you can automatically be like, oh, maybe she's got some claustrophobia.
I like seeing the creative ways that creators can handle flashbacks and things.
Yeah.
And the way that he does it with this one is by making these sort of pill-shaped panels.
Yeah.
I mean, you could figure it out on your own, or they could have, you know, colored it differently or done anything. And that's the choice that they made. And I like that. Yeah,
me too. I like when they change up the panel borders to explain something or to give you some information like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she freaks out and goes full strength and just freaking rocks that thing. Boom. Just takes it out. And I like this as your sort of almost 100% first Claremont issue. And right away, he's going to power up the women characters.
Yep.
You know, he introduces Moira, and she gets a machine gun out.
Yeah, I love it.
You know, like she's not just like a useless housekeeper. And then Storm is going to just unleash all kinds of power and fight off demons, take a beating, keep coming, and then just blow that thing up. And I think that's one of the big things with like Claremont stuff right from the get-go here is like he's going to have like really strong female characters that stand toe-to-toe with the male characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this demon just kind of wilts away and just kind of turns to dust.
Great flow with that smoke and everything too. I just love it.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, we did it. And then he drops back in the very last panel to go back to our B story.
Yep.
Where our guy that was getting on the plane, where he's like, oh, you can't get to Washington alive. Well, he definitely did not.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of times I'll see a story where they switch the scene in the middle of a page, or, you know, on a panel, like switch scenes during a page.
Yeah.
And it can be really jarring, and I hate it. And this is sort of, he's developing a language with this, you know, showing it on the same page that actually works really well to tell the story. And now that you know that that's how it's going to work, you know, and because it's so dense too, I think that it works really well for this. And it's like it's the period at the end of the story. You know, you've been following this A story for so long, and oh yeah, that's right, there was a B story where he left it with, you know, you'll never get to Washington alive, and then we see the plane crashed, which is, it's just great punctuation to it.
Yeah, I agree that, yeah, well said. It's like reminding you that I was also setting up something else, and we're just going to remind. I just need one panel to remind you of this, and then that's going to set up the next issue.
Yeah, because this is a like a what's the word I'm looking for? Not compartmentalize. It's like a standalone issue, you know, like the story ends, but because of that B story, you know, you don't get a cliffhanger in the A story, but you get a cliffhanger in the B story for one panel.
Yeah. So he's hoping, he's like, this A story was super cool. You ought to come back and come back next in 2 months to read the next one. And here's a little cliffhanger to make you want to come back.
I love it. Awesome. And you know, next issue, My Brother, My Enemy. Oh my God. I really think that I'm noticing just through this flip through, you know, the more you look at something, the more you notice things. But wow, how Dave Hunt really is a champion in this story, because let me pull mine up here. Look at this, the way that the demon is screaming, and then it flows right down into the Cockrum's drawing of the thing, you know, turning into dust. Such good lettering. Like, I didn't really pay attention to that before, and it's such an integral part of the storytelling that, you know, kudos them.
Do you think Hunt and Cockrum would have had any like contact? Like they would have like talked about any of it?
I doubt it. I mean, it's always possible, but I think what is happening is that, remember last episode, I talked about how Cockrum is just a master of leading the eye and the flow. He, you know, the energy of this thing screaming goes just like that. You know, take the away. He would have drawn it like that anyway, and then had the you know, the heads of these characters come to this boot, and then, oh, look, at his boot is facing that way, which takes you this way, and you know, he's talking to them, which goes this way. You know, the flow and the direction. And if we end the story, remember how I said that he has things moving in a left-hand direction to be a punctuation? It's exactly what's happening here. He's having you stop and come back, but then we get this one, and it has to, it's its own image. It doesn't have to play by any rules. So it basically is looking straight forward. So we get an exclamation point after the period.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so interesting. I'm so glad you recognize that, because it's
I do it all day long.
It's like, it's yeah. And it's, you know, it's like, if you're reading, like, it just, like his work, it just flows so nicely, the art.
It really does.
You don't even pay attention, but it's, you know, because it's just like happening, and you're just like, oh yeah, this is so great. And like, you have to figure out why.
Yeah. Before we end on this one, I just want to go back and take a look at the classic ones, because I think that it's kind of cool to just see them. As always, we've got an Art Adams cover with the demons. Look at that guy. This guy is just so cool looking.
Yeah, that's
I think actually that was the demon. We saw that demon in here.
So yeah, good reference, Art.
Yeah, seriously.
Art Adams.
And then Art's version of the demon itself with Nightcrawler coming on him.
Awesome.
And what I realized is that these are inked by P. Craig Russell.
Oh yeah.
And that's why it gets this cool sort of like almost a European inking feeling. And I'm quite sure that if Scott Williams wasn't already working in inking at this point, he is getting techniques from this, because, well, he doesn't have the V that he uses, but the way that he sort of outlines shapes is very similar. Yeah. And then at the we saw the added pages already, but then we got the final story that we'll just go through real quick because I don't think it really adds too much. But John Bolton comes in.
But it's fun.
Yeah, it is a fun story. Yeah, John inks his own stuff, so it's a quick little story, The Big Dare. There we get more of that interaction between Nightcrawler and Wolverine, which makes sense to go to the end of this story because that was Wolverine almost killed Nightcrawler in the danger room, and so they're just messing around here. It's sort of like a callback to that. You were talking about in the last issue how John Bolton's the faces that he drew kind of harkened back to you to or harkened forward, I guess it would have been, to an Adam Hughes kind of drawing or something.
Yeah.
So look at that Nightcrawler face right there, the way that it's lit, very much like that. I'm sure Adam Hughes was looking at Bolton when he was developing his style too. And so this story talks about how they want to go to the pub, but Nightcrawler is apprehensive. He doesn't want to go to the pub because of the way that he looks. He doesn't want to freak everybody in the town out, but he's got this sort of device that can make him look like anybody he wants. he kind of fucks with him here and says, whoever I can look like, whomever I please. Boom.
Yeah. Like Wolverine and Nightcrawler are they're one of the all-time best buddy bros in hero comics, and especially all through the X-Men run. They're always hanging out, getting a beer together. They've got this special bond, and it's kind of sad you lose that towards the end when Nightcrawler leaves the team. And then you get a different bond when Jubilee joins with Wolverine, but it's not the same. It's not the same thing. So it's always good to go back and read the classics and see these two hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we jump to the future, 11 years later, or 10 years later, when Bolton's drawing this, he's got the curve on the ears and not quite a curve on the blades, which is interesting. And then so they're gonna go into town. It's like this it looks like a German town or something. I'm not sure exactly where they were, but
it's that's the best bar in all of Marvel Comics right there, Harry's Hideaway. That's where the X-Men always hang out, and the New Mutants and everybody.
But why are they dressed like they're in Eastern Europe? Or maybe he's not. Maybe it's just the odd drawing.
It's just his style,
Yeah, I guess.
Like the old country.
Yeah, so they're kind of just hanging out here, talking about, how, he wishes that he could just kind of walk around. And he's like, what are you ashamed of the way that you are? I bet nobody would even react. If I'll bet you anything. I'll bet you that nobody would react if you did that. Turn the thing off. So he does, and the guy delivers his drink and is sort of like, whatever. Doesn't care. It's like, oh wait, no, I guess you're right. Nobody does care what I look like. I don't believe it. Maybe it's just this in this little town or whatever. And so they leave. And the waitress kind of comments Harry, that man's face, he has a tail. And a handsome one too. Oh, okay. You're into that, huh? So they're walking down the street and he's gaining confidence, which is pretty great. It's pretty funny, tipping his hat, but people are kind of looking at him very strangely. This girl sort of, her bag rip or something here, and she drops her bag and he goes to help her and gives her a peck on the cheek, walks away. you know, these Star Wars has just come out at this point, or, you know, I guess it's been a few years. And then these guys go to kind of mess with them, and they realize that it's, you know, a mask, not a mask, you know, and then they get really, really pissed about it. And, you know, Wolverine is about to, you know, is not happy and is going to like take this guy out. We get a snicked. And Nightcrawler jumps on his back and bamps him out of there. But, you know, they had a great time together. Buddies.
Yeah.
So
good
little
time on the
backstory.
town.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't necessary. I think that it's just one of those things where, you know, classic X-Men had to justify itself, you know, and its thickness. So they added some backup stories, and, you know, it adds to the character and stuff a little bit, but it wasn't like detrimental.
Yeah. I mean, it's stuff that gets developed with those characters just in the regular series anyways.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, you know, just telling a story with the same stuff he's already developed.
Right.
For new readers.
Yeah. So really cool. Yep. So that's it for X-Men number 96. We got some cool stuff happening in that. John, where can people find you on the interwebs?
I'm on the Instagram at @JDCoates, and my comics are on dinobeast.com.
Awesome. Cool. I'll put all of that in the show notes. My stuff will be in the show notes. Remember, I'm going to put right after this, I'm going to put a time-lapse video of me drawing the art for the whatever you call it at the beginning that you clicked on to watch this video. Those will always be available on my website, www.chrisandersoncomics.com. You can buy the original art of that. Until next time, we'll see you all later.
Later.
Join my Patreon to see my work before anyone else, plus score physical sketchbooks, mini comics, and commissions delivered right to your door, and read my new books, Something Seems Off and Three-Headed Pigman, as they are made. Go to my website to order original art, commissions, and my books, Lost Angels, Spectral: A Showcase of Fear, Chaotic Neutral, and more. Gray Matter Drip, The Art of Chris Anderson, is available now from Cosmic Lion Productions. Here are the upcoming conventions I'll be at the time of this recording. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. It helps spread the word. Thanks.